All right, so I'm going to start with a general question because I've heard you, and I think a lot of people have heard you before talk about the super cycle and the end of the super cycle and potentially the start of the next one. So maybe to start with the basics. Hopefully. I guess it's probably already started.
Yeah, it started probably decades ago, and this one will probably end, I don't know, maybe super cycles actually end pretty abruptly, but the next super cycle will have had seeds and roots and have probably grown for decades.
So I want to start with something.
All the cool, weird people have been building this super cycle for a long time.
Absolutely. So let's start with something a bit basic. What's a super cycle?
What's a super cycle? So you could define a super cycle in lots of different ways. The ones that I like the best involve generations. Yeah. Involve movement between generations in a fairly regular pattern, and interposed over that, we can think of things as a monetary regime or debt supercycle. So the first generational view is that you have something that breaks massively in the world, and then people still need breakfast in the morning, they still need to live, and mostly things still kind of work, but the prevailing political, geopolitical, social paradigm has broken down. And so you have this, the start of a super cycle is essentially a generation that is emerging from some sort of cataclysm, and it's kind of greenfield. There's a lot of destruction, but a lot of opportunity. And so that generation runs with it, creates a new system of the world, a new hope, essentially, and the second generation comes along and really runs with it, and growth everywhere. They're wealthier than their parents, and it looks like things are going to be great forever. And then the third generation comes along and starts to notice that, hey, the technology has evolved pretty rapidly. There are opportunities, edge cases where exploitation is possible, or where some things are breaking, and really smart people start to take advantage of the system that's prevailing, that is either for technological or other kinds of reasons, is no longer comprehensively serving everybody as well as it did. That proceeds for a little while, and all hell breaks loose because there are all sorts of ways to corrupt things, and technology's grown so powerful that you can use the technology to corrupt the old naive systems, and then you essentially rapidly devolve to some sort of collapse. That might look like a hot kinetic war, it might look like a cyber war, but either way, you move into a rapid cascading collapse and end of the super cycle. And so overlaid across social stuff is monetary stuff, and you know, we've had too much debt in the global monetary system for a really long time, and so you can imagine a monetary regime reset being necessary. And as we were discussing before, a lot of the seeds of the next super cycle have been growing for quite a long time, and so that's what we're seeing. We are, just to lay it out there, we are seeing the hopefully not too painful collapse of top-down command and control civilization, and the new hope, the new social contract is potentially one in which technology of decentralization, new forms of money, and other kinds of technologies, maybe AI, maybe not AI, can help us essentially put together another 80 or 100 years in which we're all pretty happy and the economy's growing and things are relatively healthy.
So, Joe, what I'm hearing is you kind of described where we are today, And it seems like decentralization has a role to play in this upcoming super cycle. And so, and you've been famously saying, you have this famous quote, which is decentralize all the things. So why is decentralization so important?
So we do think it's important. Doesn't necessarily have to be the solution, but we can assume it's the solution. So one thing that's going on is that we've been operating top-down command and control. We've been operating by building essentially linear systems. Put some inputs into a system, get some expected outputs from the system, and spew off a whole bunch of waste. And our economy's grown exponentially. The financial system, which is exponential in certain forms, has been driving production, which is linear in many forms. We're coming up against another sort of waste super cycle, essentially productivity and waste super cycle. And so what we do need to do is transform that into a healthy recirculating super cycle. It's possible that we can just throw up our hands and Ilya Sutskever's beneficent AI will come along and be the god of the next super cycle, and we don't have to worry about decentralization because everything will be taken care of us, taken care of for us. So that's not something we should probably rely on. That's a good B movie plot. And so I believe what you're hinting at is that the things that have driven the difficulties that we're currently in are essentially because of top-down command and control. And we need to take the power back individually, distribute it. We don't need to, so decentralize all the things was a rallying cry early in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And that made sense. Hey, we should decentralize absolutely everything and then figure it out from there. But what you really need to do is have radical decentralization in certain layers of the social system and sufficient decentralization in other layers. And so if you want nation states to benefit from these systems, if you want big companies to be able to operate in the legal systems of nation states that they don't trust or don't even have rule of law, then you need something as massively decentralized as we hope Ethereum can be and we hope Bitcoin can be. They still have a ways to go, but they're doing pretty well. And upon those foundations, so for instance on Ethereum you could write treaties and you could force governments to stake billions of dollars worth of value, and finally treaties could have some teeth. Or if you need to buy a giant shipment of soybeans from a country that you don't trust, maybe that sort of transaction should be on an national or radically decentralized network, so that no nation state can go in and put a gun to the head of some people who are running a somewhat decentralized system, and so you can do business on a big scale that way. Similarly, with layer 2s, layer 3s, layer 4s, and higher, and there will be many layers. There are lots of reasons why they don't need to be as radically decentralized. There is a beautiful technology, or a couple beautiful technologies, that enable them to set up a layer 2 network that pretty much gets the same security guarantees of an Ethereum, a full-on Ethereum architecture. But there still might be ways that things can be manipulated a little bit. We're moving towards squeezing those weaknesses out of the system, and you probably do want some interaction between the nation states and the network states. I do believe that the network states, which a lot of us will be building and living in, living much of our lives in, will be able to be radically decentralized and won't have very many weaknesses, yet there need to be bridges and touch points with nation states, because some of us will still be living some parts of our lives in nation states, and so there's some levels of potential weakness there that could be corrupted, and even if these things are built on decentralized architecture databases, there still will probably be some central points of weakness or control of those systems. But that's kind of okay, because we need to be able to get things done and affect a transition over the next super cycle.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the decentralization thing a bit later. But since you mentioned AI, right, and the rise of specifically centralized AI and the risks with that, how can we avoid such a future? And specifically, how can Web3 practically help usher into a decentralized AI?
Yeah, so I don't know that Web3 can avoid that future. I think AI itself has to avoid that future. Humanity has to avoid that future, and Web3 has tools, either tools of decentralization or primitives like zero-knowledge proofs, fraud proofs even, that can enable us to build a more decentralized AI future. So AI it's already centralizing massively, and the real culprit here is just big tech. It's the social graph, social network systems that are deeply exploitative, and so they're going to continue to be deeply exploitative. I don't see them changing their ways anytime soon, and nation states are going to continue to pursue arms races. So they're going to continue to want to push the pedal to the metal and gain advantages as much as they can. So AI is already decentralizing in a significant way. There are lots of good open source projects, and we need to hope that a lot more energy moves into these open source projects. There will be people who are trying to build the most powerful AIs, AGIs, ASIs, artificial superintelligences, but the way that AI is going to work in the next couple of decades, it feels, unless we hit a boom singularity, is that it's going to be massively distributed among people, among companies, among nation states. Each nation state should be helped, is being helped to build a foundational large language model kind of infrastructure that correctly represents its language, social conventions, subtleties in communication. So that's really necessary. And then lots of narrow AIs or agentic agent-based AI systems should be built on those things. And it's possible that that this kind of technology is going to asymptote. There's reinforcement learning systems or other kinds of systems that can enable AIs to live in their own simulated worlds or the real world and teach themselves. And so maybe those things will take us beyond. But what we do need to worry about is the bigger entities, and somehow we need to convince them to source information in a decentralized fashion, to clean up information in a decentralized fashion, to use decentralized compute networks. So that's one way to potentially control it. If there were laws, and I don't know that I'm suggesting we should put rules around this because some nation state might not pay attention to those rules. But if all the GPUs or specialized hardware was available in a decentralized context, so decentralized compute architectures, paying for it with tokens, all very transparently observable and governable. That's one interesting way to control things. If we're training and performing inference, asking the machines questions, and all of that was done under zero knowledge or using zero knowledge proofs regarding where the information came from, how it's being used, etc. There might be ways to enact international legal systems whereby AIs could grow old and happy with us, and no people will use AIs to exterminate other people. But that would be a hard system to get humans to build.
Well, I hope we actually end up building.
Yeah, well, something will happen. Forking is a great thing in our ecosystem. Forking open source software projects, forking running networks, so that you get two running networks with perhaps even more value than what was running before that. And forking happens in genetics and societies and stuff like that. So it may be the case that our species hybridizes and forks in different ways, and some of us go off and live happily ever after in a quite balanced AI, decentralized hybrid presence, way of living. Who knows?
So the title of this conference is Building Network States, Atoms Edition. And I think we have a good view of what decentralization means when it comes to digital infrastructure. So my question is more about what does it mean from a physical infrastructure perspective? And do we have the same need to decentralize at the physical level?
Absolutely. Fortunately, our physical world is already decentralized, so we're good. Humans are already decentralized. It's actually the ledger systems, the systems of ownership rights and responsibility that is confused or is used by certain people to confuse other people into believing they have ownership or rights or responsibilities or privileges. And so I think what you're actually getting at is that maybe the system of ledgers should more accurately reflect the physicality of the system. And so if one were to build a company focusing on giving people more agency, would be a great thing. So agency over their own money, agency over their identity, political activities in the form of decentralized organizations, agency over control of the means of production of food, means of access to water and clean air and other sorts of things. So I get what you're saying. We need to decentralize all the control.
So when it comes to decentralization and the question of nation states and network state, there seems to be there will probably be some form of clash, right, between new decentralized systems and legacy structures. I have a feeling you know a bit about that. Do you see this happening in crypto and also outside of crypto?
So clashes within crypto? You mean on crypto Twitter?
Between the crypto industry and legacy structures.
So yeah, absolutely. So we've been seeing it for years. Some of it's natural and organic. A lot of it has seemed manufactured. Like if you think back to the uproar about Bitcoin and Ether burning too much electricity. A lot of that seemed really manufactured. Nobody said that about the banking system and the Brinks truck system that cost so much more to operate and produced so much more pollution. So it's kind of false narratives designed to promote certain agendas. And the agenda was decentralization bad, disintermediation bad, top-down command and control good. I could talk about recent activities. Do you want me to go into the SEC stuff? Yeah, so in the U.S., the top-down command and control leader of the top-down command and control world, they like the way things operate. In the U.S., the financial industry, the top-down command and control leader of the top-down command and control country, they like winning the game that they've been winning. They like winning a rigged game, potentially, and most of the major ex-industrial complexes of the U.S. prefer to just win a rigged game, and I guess humans often prefer to win a rigged game, just in general. And so what we've seen there, specifically with respect to the SEC in the U.S., was, okay, we don't, this first in the previous regime under Jay Clayton, okay, we don't understand this, but we think that every token is a security, and we're going to study it, and we're going to make sure that these obviously fraudulent or corrupt projects are shut down. And we, our company Consesnys, had conversations with the SEC way back then, and we did help them understand that not every token was a security. And so that proceeded okay. Chair Gensler came in after having had a tremendously respected career as an MIT professor for one semester teaching blockchain. So somebody got him that job, and you have to ask why somebody got him that job. Yeah, some senator from Massachusetts potentially, and so he established himself as an expert in our domain. He's a very smart individual, and he's a very politically savvy individual. Savvy for his own purposes and savvy for other purposes. And he came in, and actually when he was a professor, he said 75% of these tokens are not securities, Ether, etc., long list of tokens, not a security. He came into the job saying, and he wrote Congress a letter saying, I don't have the authority, I don't have the legal mandate under the SEC to regulate these new technological constructs. Congress, because it's so broken, accept it in certain months before an election, and then it's broken in a different way. Congress did nothing because it's just partisan mess, and that opened up an opportunity with democracy and the legislative branch not functioning. It opened up an opportunity for the executive branch to be co-opted essentially by somebody, probably the major banks and probably certain politicians who are the intermediaries and want to stay the intermediaries in the whole system, probably by deep state actors who need top-down command and control to keep running the world through intermediaries around the world. And so somebody got to Chair Gensler or to Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden or whoever controls other puppet strings, and Chair Gensler changed his whole rhetoric, his whole argument, saying, Securities Act of 1933, 1934, Howey test. They've been all been working beautifully for a really long time. We don't need any extra tools. I got this. And so a little bit of selfishness on his part, a lot of opportunity, has led to an attempted perpetuation of a system that that's really broken, and that, if it was allowed to prevail, would have destroyed a tremendous opportunity for innovation towards decentralization. And so, fortunately, America's designed pretty well, actually. The judicial branch has been, it's pretty neutral at certain levels, and it has been clear-headed, and it has helped our industry make headway. Still a huge amount of progress needed to be made, but it looks like we're going to be able to rely on the judicial branch, and maybe the legislative branch will do something interesting. Maybe even the executive branch, somebody will come in, shocking as that may be, and do something really useful and unselfish for the world, or do something selfish that will be actually useful for the world. And so the SEC is not our friend. A bunch of agencies are politicized pretty heavily that way. But America is decentralized in a pretty significant way in its design. And if America makes it through this, then wow, what an incredible design. And also America's, it's always been consonant with decentralization. It should get to a point where it recognizes the beauty of rigorous decentralization, and we might see an American experiment 2.0 run out of this. I've been calling it a failed American experiment 1.0, but I'm not sure it's failed yet. And so we might get to a point where we needed some sort of failure mode to create the next version of the American experiment. And I apologize to any non-Americans here. We got to stop calling it the American experiment. The radical decentralization experiment.
So let's talk a bit about regeneration. And the question I wanted to ask you is, does regeneration or regenerative systems in general have a role to play in this new super cycle, in this America 2.0, or I guess world 2.0?
Yeah, so absolutely. And it goes back to what sort of systems there are in place. If you have a system in place that is operating well, maintaining its own health, serving the people, or whatever else it serves, in a way that isn't failing, then doesn't need to be regenerated. So we've moved through different generations. The baby boomer generation was a giant generation, and that caused some real imbalances in the economy and in human society, and it probably threw a lot of systems out of whack, and especially so. You can probably run a system that isn't a perfectly regenerative system if you don't stress it too much. But for systems like the monetary system, which was driven by an exponential financial set of constructs, agricultural systems, manufacturing systems, we've just been driving them too hard, and they're designed in a linear way, and so they don't have natural sort of recirculatory flows where the waste of one system is used as feedstock for another system, or even stays within its own system. We're spewing negative externalities all over the place, and if you have a society based on spewing negative externalities all over the place. Maybe this is the definition of the end of a super cycle, but that's unsustainable. And so we have a technology in decentralization and other technologies that can enable us to essentially bring everything under the tent. You can tokenize things, you can create sources and sinks in mechanism design systems, and you can run the systems based on those kinds of logic. And so we have a really good way out of this. And you can do things like tokenizing specific parts of the scarce resource of the surface of the earth, and you can create certain responsibilities. So we've been talking about GPS-like systems where you can attract people to specific pieces of land and incentivize them to provide those services. You can attract people to specific pieces of land that have been damaged and facilitate the healing of those pieces of land. And so we have the tools now and the know-how essentially to clean up the world and turn it all into recirculating systems where there are either no negative externalities or very minimal negative externalities.
Regenerate all the things?
All the things that need to be regenerated.
On that note, there's a workshop right after this led by Rob, who's somewhere here, about autonomous regenerative properties, which I know you know a bit about. So if you guys want to check it out, it's a great opportunity. I know you're an optimist, and I wanted to ask you, what is the most exciting thing for you about the future, say the next 5 to 10 years?
So I'm excited about the now. The now is actually that we finally are in a position in our technology ecosystem where we've achieved a lot of things. It's been a huge amount of work at breakneck pace, appearing to go nowhere at all from the perspective of outside of our ecosystems. Like, when killer app, what have you actually done? But what we've actually done is build layers and layers of enabling capability and enabling technology. We build module after submodule, identifying opportunities and needs, and we've gotten to a point where we've had these toy systems based on a next generation kind of database, and basically the world, society, the economy is significantly dependent on how you construct ledgers, how you build databases, what they're capable of. And so these new next generation databases, they're formally verifiable. You can validate every transaction. You can maintain the entire history of all the transactions in a system. Everybody can transparently know exactly what happened and when it happened. And so these things are essentially truth machines or shared sources of truth. They can represent a new trust foundation for the planet. And Satoshi's biggest invention, some people think it's blockchain, but better way to think about it is it's decentralized trust. It's a new kind of form of trust on the planet. And so if you combine that with some things that you can build on that, which are these things called tokens that can represent anything and can be used universally in an enormous number of contexts, you have the foundation to re-architect all of society. And so we're using tokens now to represent identity and reputation systems and attestation systems. We're very close to building scalable systems, and we're at scalability now in the sense that we can add new networks to the next generation web and get essentially infinite transactions per second as we add. We can infinitely add new resources, and that results in more transactional transactional throughput. And so we're at this point at which we can all establish and control our identities. We can control our economic and political agency, and we can start building social graphs that we as individuals, that we as communities own, control, monetize. We can add value to each other's social graphs, and we can share the value with anybody. So if I'm monetizing one or many of my social graphs, I can share that with the people who are monetizing my social graphs. So a flippening is about to happen in the sense that major social networking companies are likely going to face challenges from all of us, because as the tools and the platforms get built, we're going to be able to take our social context under our own control.
Right. Let's play a little fun game, if you're up for it.
Is it a one-word answer game?
One-word answer game.
No. Okay, go for it. I'm going to cheat a little bit, probably.
You can cheat. That's
Okay.
fine. You can rig the system. Bearish if you're not hopeful, and bullish if you are hopeful. Not investment advice, obviously. Living on planet Earth.
Yeah, wildly bearish.
Living on Mars.
Yeah, eventually.
SEC. SEC.
SEC? Call it a forcing function. I'm an optimist.
Cool. Bitcoin ecosystem.
Bitcoin ecosystem. Probably.
Ethereum ecosystem. I feel like I know the answer to that one.
Yeah. It's an easy yes.
U.S. presidential elections.
Opportunity.
U.S. as a country.
Let's call it forcing function again.
Last one. Humanity.
Humanity? Yeah, forking.
Love it. All right.
Forking, awesome.
I think we have a couple minutes for Q&A. Yeah? Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for a tech event that was very philosophical, and loved it really. So what I was asking myself is, if you would be on the top of this centralized world, what would you do to guide or to steer the transformation into the decentralized world?
So impossible to answer that question, because in order to steer a world of billions of humans, I would either do what I'm doing right now, which is trying to provide tools for decentralization, or recognize that it's kind of impossible to top-down command and control all those people. Yes, so I would do everything I could to influence whoever would listen to learn, understand, and consider adopting decentralized technologies. I would also argue that I shouldn't have that role at the top of the world, or whatever that is. I would quit and decentralize things.
Thanks for being here. This is always enlightening to hear you speak. I'll take the opposite side of that question, which is, what can we all do? and what can businesses that we're a part of do in order to bring that decentralized bottom-up world into fruition?
So I can only say really general things, and hopefully whether it's implemented in a mechanistic fashion or some soul connection, mystical fashion, we're all able to understand what's going on in our own context, and based on our own capabilities and proclivities, we're getting signals from the environment to figure out what the best next thing we should all be doing is. So we are a collective intelligence in a massive way. I think all species are probably communicating internally in the species and with other species, trying to figure out the evolution of the planet. And so listen and learn and do, I guess. Listening's important. And join V DAO.
Hey, Joe. How are you? I'm Zev. And thank you for coming. Thanks for the talk. This is more of a sort of granular question. You've spent a lot of time in New York. You've built a tremendous business in New York, and thank you for that. I'm a New Yorker myself. I'm really trying to find which cities in America, and specifically where in New York, network states coming together. I met Mark here. He's in Jersey City. There's Andrew Rose in Andrew Roberts of Fractal Boot Camp in New York. So there's network state stuff going on in New York City. Are you bullish on New York City, or do you see more of a center for network state stuff maybe somewhere else in a...
Yeah, so in terms of the number of technologists or philosophically aligned people, New York's a pretty great place. All the major cities are facing massive challenges on the planet. So I don't think I would suggest to somebody that if they want to explore the development of network states, they need to go live in a large urban center. But you can't, there's a lot of talent there and a lot of connectivity there. So yeah, New York is very strong in my opinion, but we've also, we've seen a massive migration of talent since the start of COVID, really, or when they allowed us to move around the world partway through COVID, and so it's much more distributed right now, and the tools are better and better for connecting with people. So I would say, rather than move to a single city to be able to maximally pursue your interests, I should probably go to a few conferences a year and hang out online, and most importantly, join V DAO. Did I say that? Yeah. There we go.
Let's give Joe and Marc a round of applause. Thank you.